The year was 1867, and the frontier morning carried a chill sharp enough to cut a man's pride clean through. Jace McAllen, 23, rode toward Buckhorn, crossing with his hat pulled low and his thoughts pulled even lower. Frost clung to grass. The sun hadn't yet cleared the roofs, and the quiet carried that uneasy tension a town gets right before something ugly happens. Jace came for a simple thing, justice, or something close to it. Clay Rourke had driven his cattle across Jace's western pasture, torn down 2 fences, and then had the nerve to claim Jace was a trespasser. Jace expected an argument, maybe a fine, maybe fists. He didn't expect the whole town to be waiting. He reined in at the square. Men leaned against storefronts, whispering. Cards paused mid-play outside the saloon. A big man with a dark coat and darker grin stepped out. Clay Rourke, 41, broad-shouldered, clean-shaved, eyes mean as spurs. "Well, look who crawled in," Clay called, loud enough to pull every gaze. Little Jace McAllen come to cry about his precious fence. Jace kept his voice steady. "You crossed my land, Clay. You broke what you had no right to touch." Clay stepped closer, boots echoing off the boards. "No right? Boy, I got more right on this land than you got years on this earth." The men around him chuckled, low and cruel. Jace felt the heat rise in his chest, but refused to show it. Clay circled him like a wolf smelling weakness. "You want justice? Here's justice." Before Jace could brace, Clay shoved him hard in the chest. Jace stumbled back. Laughter flared. Another shove. Then another. Jace's jaw tightened. "Clay, I'm not fighting you in front of your men." "Oh, you ain't?" Clay spat. "Then get on your knees and beg." The crowd silence cut the air clean. Jace stared at Clay, refusing. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Clay slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked like a shot. Jace staggered. Another slap. Then Clay grabbed Jace's shirt and slammed him to the dirt. Boots kicked dust over him. Men jeered. Jace pushed himself up, but Clay's boot pressed his shoulder back down. "Stay down," Clay hissed. "You're nothing in this town. Nothing." Jace looked around, searching for one decent face. The sheriff leaned on a post, doing nothing. Shame burned hotter than the rising sun. He stood, dust falling off his coat, chest heaving. Clay fired a shot near his feet. "Next one ain't a warning. Leave Buckhorn by sundown or be buried in it." Jace said nothing, could say nothing. He mounted his horse and rode out slow, the laughter trailing him like ghosts. Inside, something broke. And something else, something harder, began to grow. The prairie wind caught Jace's coat as he rode home, carrying the sting of humiliation with every mile. His father's ranch, what little remained of it, sat tired and hollow, like the bones of something once proud. Empty corrals, a sagging porch, a windmill creaking in the breeze. Jace dismounted, shoulders heavy. He touched the porch rail. His father had built it with scarred hands and stubborn hope. A man's worth, his father used to say, ain't in his cattle, but in who rides with him when trouble comes. Jace swallowed hard. No one rode with him today. He walked the property, boots crunching frost. A trough lay overturned. A corner post had rotted through. Everything he owned was fading. Clay had taken his land, but this morning Clay took something deeper. Jace knelt beside the corral fence, though it smelled of cold and memory. He whispered, "Pa, what am I supposed to do now?" No answer came, just a lonely wind brushing past. But then, under the shame, under the bruised pride, something fierce stirred. Clay wanted him gone. Clay wanted him broken. Jace stood. No, he wouldn't be chased off like a stray dog. He saddled his horse again. If the law was bought and the town was blind, then he needed someone Clay couldn't bully. His father once traded with the Northern Cheyenne, earned their respect. Their chief Gray Hawk owed him a favor. If anyone would stand against Clay Rourke, it was the people Clay feared most. Jace strapped on his rifle, tightened the cinch, and mounted. "If I die," he muttered, "I'll die riding forward." The sky darkened as he crossed the open plains. Coyotes howled in the distance. The moon rose white and cold. Every hoofbeat echoed the same vow. "I won't bow." Not again. Hours later, the prairie seemed to shift behind him. A faint thunder. Hooves. Jace's heart kicked. Riders. He didn't wait. He spurred his horse hard. Dust flew. Wind roared in his ears. Hooves. Thunder closer. Jace ducked low. His horse darted between boulders. A gunshot cracked the night. Stone splintered near his head. Clay's scouts, Jace hissed. Another shot. Then another. He leaned into his horse. Come on, girl. They raced through a narrow pass. The riders fell behind, cursing into the dark. When the land finally leveled, Jace slowed, lungs burning. The scouts had turned back. He pushed forward, deeper into the northern woods, until the trees swallowed him whole. Only then did exhaustion pull him from the saddle. He collapsed near a riverbank, darkness closing in like a curtain. His last thought before sleep took him was a simple one. If I wake, everything changes. The world returns slowly. First sound, then breath, then the sharp bite of cold water dripping from leaves overhead. Jace forced his eyes open. A painted face stared down at him. A young Cheyenne warrior, Talon about 25, stood with bow drawn, the arrow aimed at Jace's throat. His dark hair was braided, and his chest bore symbols of the Elk Society. His stance was steady, calm, deadly. Jace raised both hands slowly. I'm not here to fight. Talon didn't blink. Why are you in our hunting grounds? His English was clear, but edged. I'm looking for Gray Hawk, Jace said, voice rough. My father was Thomas McAllen. Something flickered in Talon's eyes. Recognition, maybe disbelief. He didn't lower the bow. You bleed, Talon said. Only then did Jace notice his arm, grazed by a bullet somewhere during the chase. Dry blood streaked the sleeve. You cross much land to find death, Talon added. No, Jace said softly. To find help. A silence stretched. Talon finally lowered the bow, but didn't offer comfort. Come, Chief will decide. Jace pushed himself up, dizzy but determined. Talon walked ahead, silent as shadow. The forest opened into a clearing filled with lodges, smoke rising in thin spirals. Horses tied along the edges. Children paused their play to stare. Women carrying hides slowed their steps. Several warriors approached, hands on weapons. Talon gestured. He seeks the chief. The warriors parted as an older man stepped out. Gray Hawk, 60 tall, with silver braids and eyes sharp as winter stars. His presence alone commanded the entire clearing. He studied Jace from boots to brow. Thomas McAllen's son, Gray Hawk said in a voice like distant thunder. Your father traded honest. He died with honor. Jace bowed his head. Thank you. Why do you come? Jace swallowed. The truth fell heavy on his tongue, but hiding it served no purpose. I was shamed, he said quietly, in front of a whole town, by Clay Rourke. A ripple moved through the surrounding warriors at the name. Gray Hawk's gaze narrowed. Rourke brings ruin wherever he walks. He wants my land, Jace continued. Wants me gone. Says he'll bury me if I don't leave. Gray Hawk stepped closer. And you ride here, broken, hunted, wounded. Seeking what? Jace met his eyes. A chance to stand again. The chief studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. To the warriors, not to Jace. Test him, Gray Hawk said. If he endures, he may speak again. Talon placed a firm hand on Jace's shoulder. Not unkind, but unyielding. Come, he said. Your fight begins now. Jace followed him into the heart of the camp, his legs weak, his pride bruised, but his resolve sharper than any blade. One thought carried him forward. Steady as the river's flow, he walked into this land alone. He wouldn't walk out that way. The clearing opened wider as Jace McAllen followed Talon, the Cheyenne warrior, his limbs stiff from the long night and river crossing. The smell of pine and smoke hit him first, sharp and raw, carrying the scent of horses, hides, and distant fires. Every step into the camp made him aware of his naked vulnerability. The warrior's eyes followed, quiet and calculating. Talon moved like a shadow, calm, precise, exuding a confidence Jace had yet to claim. The camp was alive, yet disciplined. Lodges formed semicircles around open fire pits. smoke spiraling toward the pale dawn. Children peered cautiously, holding small wooden toys, while women busied themselves with hides and cooking. Horses stamped, snorted, and shifted on their tethers. Jace's eyes darted from figure to figure, noting every stance, every whisper. The weight of his father's legacy seemed heavier here, among people who had seen and survived far worse than a land baron's cruelty. Gray Hawk 60, the chief, emerged with the deliberate weight of a man who commanded both respect and fear. Silver braids hung over his broad shoulders, and his eyes, sharp as winter stars, swept over Jace from boots to brow. "Thomas McAllen's son," he said, voice like rolling gravel, low and deliberate. "Your father traded honest. He died with honor." Jace bowed, not out of fear, but in recognition. "Thank you, Chief." Gray Hawk's gaze lingered. "Why do you come?" Jace's throat tightened. He spoke of Clay Rourke, of the public shaming, the threat, the theft of his land. Every word was measured, revealing pain without begging. As he spoke, a subtle tension rippled to the gathered warriors. Gray Hawk listened, expression unreadable, the firelight catching in his silver hair. "Rourke brings ruin wherever he walks," he said finally. "And you seek what?" "I seek a chance to stand again," Jace answered, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The chief's eyes narrowed. "Then you will be tested," Gray Hawk said, his tone carrying finality. "Prove your strength, humility, and purpose. Only then may you speak again." Talon's hand pressed briefly on Jace's shoulder, firm but not kind. "Come," he said. "Your test begins now." Jace followed, stepping into the heart of the camp. His resolve solidified. He would not walk away broken, not here, not anywhere. The first test was immediate. Gray Hawk had prepared a horse, a stallion untamed and wild, its dark coat glinting like wet steel in the dawn. Jace's task: ride, control, and earn the horse's trust. Each movement was scrutinized, every falter observed by dozens of silent eyes. Sweat slicked his brow. The horse snorted and kicked at the dirt. A wrong move could throw him into the rock-strewn earth. He mounted, heart hammering. The animal reared, hooves striking the ground, dust curling. Jace leaned, coaxed, whispered, and finally, inch by inch, the stallion yielded. Next came a spear-throwing challenge. Jace's first few attempts missed, lodging in dirt or glancing off logs. Talon watched, arms crossed, lips tight. The chief stood, expression unchanged. "Precision comes from patience, not anger," Gray Hawk intoned. Jace inhaled sharply, relaxed his shoulders, and let the spear fly. Bullseye. Murmurs of approval traveled through the warriors. Then, the most grueling test. Night alone in the wolf territory bordering the camp. Jace was given only a knife, a pouch of food, and a rope. As darkness swallowed the land, the sounds of snapping twigs and distant howls pierced the quiet. Fear gripped him, cold as river water. He crouched low, senses sharpened, ears straining. Wolves prowled near, their yellow eyes catching the moonlight. He fought panic with logic, moving silently, heart hammering in chest, knife ready. One wolf lunged. Jace sidestepped, slashing its path with the blade. It retreated, and he survived the night by wit and instinct, emerging at dawn exhausted but alive. Talon met him there, expression unreadable, then allowed a small nod. Respect was earned, not given. Gray Hawk's eyes softened fractionally. "Endurance is not in strength alone, but in heart," he said. Jace felt the weight of both exhaustion and newfound confidence settle in his chest. That evening by a fire, Talon spoke more openly. "You carry more than shame, Jace. You carry your father's name." He looked to the horizon where the moon sank low. "Clay Rourke killed my cousin. I know the taste of vengeance." Jace's eyes met his, understanding dawning. Here was a bond forming, not of blood, but shared experience and purpose. The final trial came at the river crossing, icy and treacherous. Jace, soaked and shivering, gripped his rifle and ropes as Talon guided him to the edge. The current roared like a living thing, icy fingers pulling at boots and horses alike. Rocks shifted underfoot. One misstep could mean death. Jace plunged in first, water rushing over his chest, nearly yanking him under. Talon's voice cut through the roar. Fight! Forward! A second later, Talon leapt into the current, helping Jace regain footing. Together, teeth clenched, muscles screaming, they forced the horse across. Emerging on the opposite bank, gasping, bruised, and drenched, Jace felt a surge of triumph. Greyhawk's eyes met his across the clearing. The chief's gaze was no longer cold. You have endured. You have humbled yourself. You have shown courage and restraint. At dawn, you will not stand alone. Word spread quickly. One warrior after another, quietly, solemnly, volunteered. 10, 40, 60, and then more. A force was gathering, silent, disciplined, ready. Jace's chest tightened with awe and an unfamiliar hope. The memory of humiliation in Buckhorn returned, now tempered with the knowledge that the next sunrise would be unlike any other. That night, Jace sat by the fire beside Talon. The air smelled of pine and smoke, warm against the cold, tense night. Talon finally smiled faintly. The first time all day. Your father walks with you today, he said. Jace looked into the flames, letting the heat warm more than just his frozen limbs. It warmed his spirit. Outside the circle of firelight, shadows shifted, warriors whispered. All had committed themselves quietly. When the sun rose, 300 strong, Jace would ride with him toward the town where he had been shamed. The thought alone made his chest ache with anticipation and fear. But he no longer felt alone. Talon leaned close, voice low. Remember this. A man is measured not by what he owns, but by who stand behind him when he walks into the storm. Jace nodded. He was ready. Tomorrow, the frontier would see a reckoning. Dawn broke over Buckhorn Crossing like a silent verdict. The horizon glowed pale orange, thus rising waves as 300 warriors, mounted and armed, moved in perfect rhythm behind Jace McAllen. He sat tall in the saddle, leather creaking, hat low, eyes scanning the town he had left in humiliation. Talon rode to his left, quiet, calculating, face painted an expression unreadable. Greyhawk brought up the rear, steady, commanding, silver braids catching the first light. The streets were empty. The air smelled of baked dirt and livestock, punctuated by the faint metallic tang of gun oil. Jace felt the old fear claw at him, but beneath it, something fiercer, resolve. Every hoofbeat behind him reminded him he no longer rode alone. Every shadow held a witness to his courage now. Clay Rourke stepped out of the saloon, hand brushing his coat, eyes scanning the horizon. He froze mid-step when the distant thunder of hundreds of hooves reached him. His grin faltered. That's impossible, he muttered, voice trembling despite himself. He squinted into the rising sun. Dust clouds rippled across the plains. Then he saw the line of riders, stretching longer than the town itself. Jace was at the front. Men of the town peeked from windows and behind posts, mouths agape. The silence that followed was heavier than any gunshot. Clay's men moved to form a hasty defense, hands on guns, faces pale. But their courage had already eroded at the sight of 300 disciplined warriors, their painted and determined faces glinting in the morning light. Jace stopped his horse in the middle of the street. The ground seemed to hold its breath. He raised his head, letting Clay see the fire in his brown eyes. It ends today, he said. His voice carried across the empty square. Your tyranny, your lies. Today, Buckhorn decides what man truly is. Clay sneered, but was forced. You think a crowd behind you makes you brave? Jace's gaze didn't falter. Behind him, Talon shifted, bow ready, and the warrior's silent discipline spoke louder than words. Every man, every arrow, every rifle whispered, we ride together or we fall together. The first shots rang out almost simultaneously. Clay's men fired blindly, bullets whistling past as arrows cut to the air with deadly precision. Horses reared and bucked, thus exploding. Jace leaned low, gripping the reins, heart hammering. The first wave of chaos was brief. 300 warriors moved like one organism, coordinated, unstoppable. Jace noticed the townfolk hesitating in the streets. Some ran for cover. Some froze. Fear mixed with awe. One man called out, "Is it McAllen?" Another whispered, "It's him with the Cheyenne." The battle rhythm was short, Sharp, explosive. Guns fired. Horses neighed. Dust and smoke mingled with the bitter morning air. Jace focused on the path ahead, every motion precise, every decision fast. A young warrior to his right took a hit. Jace's mind registered it instantly. Talon pulled him aside, motioning to continue. No mercy, no hesitation. Clay Rourke attempted to rally his men, shouting orders that barely carried over chaos. Jace's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a clarity he had never known. Every humiliation, every slap, every sneer he had endured now propelled him forward. There was no turning back. The street narrowed, forcing confrontation. Clay's men fired again. Talon's arrow felled the nearest assailant. Jace raised his rifle, fire echoing off buildings. Motion was constant, fast, unrelenting. This was not revenge alone. It was redemption. By mid-morning, the remaining resistance fell back into the saloon and nearby buildings. Dust hung heavy. Silence returned, but the tension was palpable. Jace's eyes never left Clay, who had slunk to the barn, hands trembling, face pale, realizing the fight was lost. Clay bolted for the barn, and Jace's horse followed silently. Muscles coiled for the inevitable. The town was behind him now, eyes wide, breaths held. Jace dismounted just outside the barn doors, rifle in hand, boots crunching on scattered straw. Talon and a few warriors stayed back, surrounding the structure with precise calm, ensuring escape was impossible. Inside, the barn smelled of dust, hay, and fear. Clay drew a hidden revolver, hands shaking. Jace advanced slowly, deliberately. "It doesn't have to end badly for you," Jace said evenly. Clay sneered, raising the gun. Jace's reflexes were honed by every hardship he had endured. With a sharp kick, the gun flew from Clay's hands into the straw. A fist followed, quick, controlled, and Clay crumpled, chest hitting the ground hard, unconscious. Outside, Talon called back, his voice low. "The town is watching. Let them see justice, not blood." Jace stepped out, shoulders squared, gaze sweeping the square. Townsfolk emerged slowly from hiding, faces showing relief, fear turning to cautious hope. Children peeked from behind posts, eyes wide. Women clutched their shawls, whispering. The atmosphere shifted. The power that had ruled through fear dissolved like dust in the wind. Greyhawk rode up beside Jace. "Your father walks with you," he said softly. "Today, you honored his name and yours." Jace nodded, the weight in his chest finally easing. He had faced humiliation, terror, and death, and had emerged stronger, tempered by every trial. He felt the pride of standing tall, not just for himself, but for every person who had suffered under Clay's reign. The final act was swift. Clay's men surrendered, their spirit broken without their leader. Weapons were collected. No further blood needed to be spilled. Jace addressed the town, voice calm but firm. "No man rules through fear, not him, not me, not anyone. Let today be a lesson." The Cheyenne warriors began to withdraw, blending into the forest edge. Talon rode beside Jace one last time. Your courage drew them together. Remember this. A man's measure is not in his land or his fists, but in the people who ride with him when the storm comes. Jace watched as they faded into the distance, the sun climbing higher, dust swirling in golden light. He touched the rifle at his side, then tilted his hat to the townfolk, now free from fear. In that moment, the frontier seemed less cruel, less lonely. He had reclaimed not just his honor, but his place in the world. The town would remember this day, and so would he. As he rode toward the horizon, the wind carried the voices of the past and promises of the future. The frontier was still dangerous, still wild, but he was no longer broken. He had endured, learned, and risen, and somewhere deep in his chest, a quiet, unshakable pride burned brighter than any humiliation he had ever known.